It's Tuesday, 12:30, and I'm so excited to be with you again this week for another fabulous episode of the Mindset Michelle TV show. And we're so excited and we really enjoy having you join us each week for the fabulous guests that we have on, talking about their expertise and their insights into how you too can create a successful mindset. And this week is another fabulous week where we have the extra special guest, Karen Porter. Hello, Karen.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Good, thank you. For those that don't know Karen for over 25 years has been working in the marketing and communications space, and she's also the founder and owner of Underground Communications. So she's one of those experts that knows about communications and marketing and all of the different insights into that. And today, Karen is going to be sharing with us some of the wisdom and background that she has around how you too can use some of that communication for finding your voice, and in particular, finding it around diversity and inclusion. Now, a lot of this comes from Karen's background in the BCorp space. So she helps organisations to become BCorp certified. And for those of you that don't even know what I'm talking about, when I start talking about BCorp, I'll let Karen also explain about some of that to do with her background. So Karen, please share some of your background and how you came to be doing this work, this fabulous work with everybody.
Thanks, Michelle. Before we get going, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on where we are lucky enough to live, work and play in Australia, and where everybody else is as well, and acknowledge their continuing access to the waters, lands, and acknowledge their elders past, present and future. So a bit about me. I'm an impact-led stakeholder engagement specialist, and as you mentioned, I'm a B consultant, both of which work hand in hand together when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And I've had a bit of a roundabout way of getting there, I suppose. So I grew up in the north of England in a town called Rochdale, which incidentally I was researching on the weekend, which is what you do when you're in lockdown, and discovered something I didn't know, which Lord Byron, the poet, is actually from Rochdale. Did not know that. And from a very early age, I always wanted to be a journalist. I always had my nose in a book, loved reading and loved writing. So back in the day, we didn't have such a thing as a communications degree. So I applied to Oxford Polytechnic to do a publishing degree, but it was a combined degree. I wanted to do publishing in English. And because of a new system that they had for accepting students, I ended up on the law course. So I did law and publishing as my degree. So not exactly journalism, but it's certainly given me a good grounding for what I do now. So that was my sort of university studies. And after university, I decided to go traveling with a friend. So I came out to Australia on a 1-year working holiday visa, your traditional Pommy backpacker. And here I am 31 years later, still here. So obviously I'm in this new country and deciding, what career I'll have. And I got a 10-page letter from my dad when I suggested I might go into admin, telling me not to waste my education. So I basically refreshed my legal studies because so that, I had the Australian law covered. And I worked as a paralegal in a couple of city law firms and decided it really wasn't for me at all. But because I'd done that studying here, it led me to a couple of roles in a really progressive company for the time. So this is in the early 90s. That was a a company that serviced the legal industry. So they were probably one of the earliest tech companies, if you like. And I worked both in customer service and in PR and marketing for this company, which gave me a really broad background in terms of stakeholder engagement that encompasses all of your stakeholders, not just, you know, outward facing towards your customers. So I had a really good experience there. Then I decided it was time to start a family. And this is where I was lucky to work where I was, because they really were quite progressive. And it was a very much a sort of a family run, if you like. They were reasonably sizable, and by the time I worked for them, partly owned by Telstra, but still had that real community approach to how they ran the business. So when I was on maternity leave with my youngest son, my oldest son, I got 3 months in and went, oh, a little bit bored here. Can I work 1 day a week? And they said, sure. So this was in the days of dial-up modems. So, you know, not exactly high tech that we have now, but yeah, so I was able to sort of keep up to date with what was going on with work and keep my brain functioning at the same time. And then I went back part-time. And with my second son, I sort of said to them, you know, this whole coming into the city thing, I'm not really sure about that. How about I work from home and I only come in if I have to have a meeting? And they went, sure. So, and you got to think this is 20 years ago. So they really were, you know, I was very lucky to work in a place that actually valued the people who worked there and understood that, you know, if we want to keep these people, we have to be flexible and we have to work with what works for them. So from there, my third son, when it got to son number 3, I decided that I needed a little bit more flexibility with 3 sons under 5. So I decided to start my own thing and started off as a freelance copywriter. So I worked for a number of different companies during that time. And then when the youngest went to school, is when I founded Underground Communications. And it was founded always with purpose at its core. Community is our core value, and with the intention of helping companies to really embed the values of community in, you know, the projects that they were doing, as well as sharing their stories of impact. And, you know, so I talked about purpose right from the beginning. And in 2012, I saw a lot of glazed eyes because it wasn't really a thing back then. But I persisted, and here we are, in a world where purpose isn't necessarily something that is not understood anymore.
What a story, Karen. I mean, wow. Thank you for explaining it and helping people to understand, because I think understanding people's backgrounds and where they've come from, especially there'll be many migrants watching this and hearing your story of, you know, coming here for a year and being here 31 years later. They will also be hearing that and go, oh yeah, they've got a very similar story of they came for a vacation, fell in love with the place and stayed. And I love that evolution, and also that role modelling you had from that company about that diversity of thinking around, especially in those days with the dial-ups, that diversity of thinking around, well, people don't physically have to be sitting in the office to be productive and working. You can actually have people at home doing the work, and especially in the days before now, when it was kind of heresy to kind of even suggest it, right the way through to how, and that's what we'll talk about with the questions today, around that creating that success mindset. And I love that evolution to where you're able to create your own company and have purpose as the focus for that company. And do you want to just quickly all those people that don't know what a B Corp is, just define what a B Corp is.
Sure. So the B Corp movement was started back in, I think, 2007 in the US by, it's a non-profit called B Lab. And basically, B Corp certification, it's a very rigorous process. You start with an online assessment. So it's essentially you start with a self-assessment, but the rigor comes in that once you submit that assessment, you also have to provide them with the documentary evidence that supports your answers. So the assessment is around 5 impact areas. So governance, workers, community.
Maybe not so much the details, but what does it mean? So you go through the process, and what maybe does it mean?
Yeah. So looking at all those impact areas, though, it's like that's a significant part, because what it means is it's not just around, people think of it as being about sustainability, but it's actually about how you run your organisation, you know, how you treat your workers and the community, whether you consider the environment in your decisions, and the kind of customers that you work with as well. So it's quite a rigorous assessment of basically business for good.
So if I was to summarise then, a B Corp certification is something that companies can get that shows that they also have social values and social enterprise at the heart of how they operate. Just for those that don't know any of the language in this space. So not everybody has it, but organisations can go and get it. And what it does is it shows that they've been through that rigorous assessment that you've described. And that assessment and that testing shows that they, at the heart of the organisation, have those values and purpose around it.
Yeah, and it's specifically for-profit businesses, so it's not a certification for non-profits per se. So if you've got charitable access, then you can't certify. But it is specifically, you know, designed for companies that are in business for profit, but not profit at any cost. It's about recognising that, you know, being a financially sustainable business means that you can still do things for impact as well.
You can still do good for the country, the community, and for the planet. And with all of these amazing different elements, it's interesting then with your lens, what do you think is success? What does success mean to you?
Yeah, actually, my concept of success has actually changed quite a bit in the last couple of months. I used to put a lot of store in, you know, we've won awards, you know, where we were nominated, which I'm still really proud for this. So we've been recognised as Best for the World B Corp. So sort of 2 years in a row. We skipped 2020 because they didn't award them in 2020, but so Best for the World Community, which that's okay because it's not really about us, it's about what we do for others. So, you know, I think my perception of what success was really influenced externally, you know, as what you perceive, you know, you've made it when you achieve all of these different things. But 2 months ago, I was diagnosed as having ADHD, and that has completely flipped my thinking on what success is. And, you know, I now don't feel pressured to put my standard of success based on what other people think. It's purely internal to what I perceive success looks like. And I think, you know, from a personal level, I perceive success for me has been, you know, having been a single parent for 8 years and raising and you know, growing a business at the same time. Obviously that comes with a lot of challenges and split attention and, you know, worrying that you're not giving the attention to either of them. But success on a personal level is that I have such an excellent relationship with my sons. So they're almost all adults now. Just the youngest will be an adult at the end of this year, but just seeing how their approach to life, how considerate they are, how they care about the planet and other people, and they are so inclusive. That to me is success, because I have successfully shared my values, to the next generation, and they've picked them up. So
what wonderful. Yeah, what wonderful reflections of your children, your three sons. But I want to pick up on that transition firstly from, the external, the awards and the worldly kind of success, and then the awareness and the prognosis 2 months ago of the ADHD, and that helping to shift to start to value the interpersonal relationships, the values of your son, all of those different elements that helped you to then see that internally, that definition of success grew to have more meaning for you. So given that we're covering quite a wide range of topics here, from, moving to a new country, raising children, raising a successful and growing a successful business, and then, the BCorp, and there's many different avenues and topics here, but I think we kind of came around the idea that diversity and inclusion was something that would kind of encompass so many different threads here. So in terms of diversity and inclusion, especially around COVID, what might be some tips to help with mindset and creating that successful mindset that you would like to share with people today? What comes to mind for you with that?
So I think a really key one for me is always looking to improve, which might not seem like it's a diversity and inclusion avenue, but it really is, because I think especially, if you are putting humans and people at the center of all of your decisions, then you're always looking for ways to improve both externally and internally. And that really requires you to make sure that you're creating an environment where everybody gets a voice. They have, the ability to contribute no matter where they are in the organization. So, it's not only leadership that gets to make decisions or inform decisions. If you've created that environment, which is a safe space. So for example, for us, one of our values is risk taking. And that seems unusual, I know, but the explanation is that we fail forward. So I've created an environment where I want people to try new things because it's safe for them to experiment and not necessarily achieve what they set out to, but they're actually trying new things and innovating. And I think if you create a safe space that is inclusive of everybody, then you can only improve.
I think this is a great point around, and we work with ourselves, work with clients a lot around, if you're not aiming and moving forward, then you're stagnating. So I like the elements that you're describing underneath it. I think I'm thinking of that as like an umbrella, and underneath that there's the permission to fail, the permission to explore, the permission to this, the permission to that, because I think as leaders, the role is to create that environment, that capsule where people can feel like outwardly and inwardly, I like the distinction you made there as well, they can feel like they can keep moving forward, and also to understand that if they're not making the informed choices themselves to move forward, then other people are moving them forward for whether they like it or not. Yeah. And I think that that's a really important thing for people to understand. If they think, oh, I'm too tired, I'm this or that, they will still move forward. It will just not be under their control. So Really wonderful points there.
Yeah, thanks. And then I guess another thing I would say is don't think that you have to have all of the answers. And it's related to the first point, and I think it's so important. Coming back to that concept of the leadership team are the ones who make all the decisions, or the leadership team is are the ones who inform all the decisions. I think it's really important to take your own lens off and see things through the eyes of others, because otherwise you just end up doing the same thing. You know, what's that saying that Einstein has, that X insanity? Insanity is
doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result.
Exactly. And while we're quoting people, Steve Jobs has been known to say, you know, why hire smart people and then tell them what to do? We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. And it's the same from a diversity and inclusion perspective as well, is that, you know, there's no point hiring people who are just like you, because you end up in the same space. And, you know, you don't have a robust, innovative organization that can grow and scale if you're just looking through your own lens all the time.
That's where I love to bring in the mindfulness element, because especially when I'm doing workshops where we co-create the outcomes at the beginning, there may be some material and some information and knowledge that needs to be gained throughout that workshop, but how we go about learning those elements. And also I love it when we're talking in the diversity and inclusion space, because the perception and the lens, and I talk in lenses all the time, the lens that people bring to those discussions are all so different. And it's amazing how you can look at the same thing. It's that in management, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but they use the soccer ball, where half the soccer ball is white and the other half the soccer ball is black. And you talk to people about how if you're looking at the ball from either side, you could say this ball is black and this ball is white, and people are both right. So that's where understanding the lenses, which comes from cultures and experiences and backgrounds, can really, I love that point that you're saying, because it really helps to then understand that, you know, you could be saying black and white and both be right, as opposed to there's one dominant right or wrong, but it's having that variety of ideas and thoughts that can help you to come up with the best solution or a better solution.
Yeah. And I think also, you know, it's not just right or wrong. It's understanding that, or realizing that we are conditioned by who we are, and it's a continuous evolution. You know, so even if you uncover an unconscious bias that you didn't know you had, it doesn't mean that suddenly, you know, that's the answer to everything, because, you know, as you go through life and work and business and you interact with even more people, you've got the opportunity to get the perspective on something from a different way, from somebody else's lived experience. And I think it's important to recognize that not everybody has the same lived experience, and that's why, you know, it's important to take your own lens off occasionally, because otherwise you miss the opportunity of creating something innovative from somebody else's perspective.
So true. And I love it when you see the cartoons that talk about how with COVID they keep saying we're in the same boat together, and then people come back and have different pictures of different types of boats to reflect, you know, you might be on a luxury yacht, but I'm on a little minnow, or, you know, I'm on a cruise liner enjoying myself by going to the movies, etc. in say WA, which don't have any lockdowns, compared to, you know, we're all sitting at home in New South Wales and Victoria at the moment. So that perception, and I think that the different types of boats is a good way of thinking of those different lenses. Again, not right or wrong, but just those differences that people have when looking through things. And what else do you think, especially around COVID, is something that can help people with the mindset around diversity and hearing those less vulnerable voices at this time?
Yeah, look, I think you really hit on the the nail on the head with that analogy of the boat. I think recognizing that, not diminishing anybody's experience, because, you know, I think we've all sort of said, you know, I'm not feeling great, but I live in Australia. You know, I'm not on the street. I've got this lovely home, whatever. You know, we still need to recognize human feelings and emotions, and we all have those, but also recognize that we're really not in this together in equal measure globally. You know, we're all currently talking about vaccinations here, but we need to recognize that we are lucky enough to have that opportunity, whereas in some countries they're still waiting. You know, and it is a global problem, not just Australia's problem. I think that can be something that's hard to remember, is that, you know, we kind of look at things from our own perspective and what we're experiencing right now. And the Australian perspective is that we've gone into lockdown, the rest of the world's opening up, we've gone into lockdown, and you forget that, you know, the tables were turned, and things can change at any moment. So I think from the diversity and inclusion perspective, I think it's important to recognise that, you know, we are still part of a global community, even though we've been shut off from the world for a bit.
And I love that relativeness element that you were bringing in there. So even with my funny little analogy about the different sizes and shapes of boats, that whatever your experience is, to really own that and to embrace that, even if you recognise that, you know, you're well off compared to other places or other situations, whatever that might be, to still own that your experience of it is actually just as valid and just as important, especially with people's mental health issues and the way that the stresses of what's happening at the time. I think it's, the diversity in our element is being able to see with that different lens all of these different relativeness, but still, yes, I agree, embracing your own experience of what it means for you in your own situation.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, because in any diverse situation, it's not about, we've got to remember, it's not about people who look like me creating space for people from other diverse backgrounds. It's about us working together. And so we need to understand that we are all human beings. Yes, we need to recognise our privileges, but also we are human beings working together. And we're all human beings at the end of the day. And so if people wanted to contact you after today, Karen, what would be the best way of contacting you? So my best contact is on LinkedIn. I tend to hang out there quite a bit. So it's Karen Porter Oz is my LinkedIn name. So that's definitely the best place to
Thank
get a hold
you.
of me.
And if there was quickly 1 or 2 words that you would say or share with your younger self, what would that be?
Don't lose your curiosity and the need to solve problems, because that's what's going to keep you going when things may seem quite tough, and you'll never run out of great books to read.
You'll never run out of what, sorry?
Great books to read.
Great books to read.
Don't worry.
Fabulous. Yes, there are so many books out there. Well, What an amazing day, and I can't believe how quickly the time has flown, but thank you so much for being on the show today, Karen.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. It was really good fun.
Wonderful. And thank you to everybody out there for watching again. It's been another incredible and insightful, I can't thank Karen enough, another very different lens again of looking at what types of skills and tools and tips to use to create that a successful mindset, and looking at it this week from that diversity and inclusion element. So I encourage everybody out there to really, again, look at things and think about it in terms of the different lenses and other elements that we've spoken about today. But until next week, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.